joined by California Congressman Darrell Issa, the incoming chairman of the House Oversight Committee. Thank you, first of all, for the time. Appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
I want to ask you about your agenda in the committee next year, but more immediately, the tax fight here in Washington. A lot of focus on the Democrats balking at their president's own proposal. What about the Republican perspective? Can you support this compromise?
I can. I've never voted for a tax increase. I don't want to start now. This is a tough compromise because there's a tremendous amount of dollars added, basically in the form of a stimulus, new money to the bottom, hoping they'll spend it right away. But I think Republicans are willing to do what's right to make sure that investment continues.
What about the deficit impact here? It seems to be the part of the discussion that's getting the least attention.
There's no question that there is a deficit impact, but ultimately, let's remember, Peter, the deficit comes from overspending, not just the tax rates.
What about your colleagues on the other side of the aisle? If House Democrats stand in the way of this deal, what happens to this situation?
Well, then we start again when we clearly can take care of it in the House and have more votes in the Senate, and we'll work with the president in the next Congress. But you know, there's a real loss because the investment, the business community right now, they're deciding whether to take gains this year, whether to make investments this year, and in the next couple of weeks, they're going to act if we don't.
All right, let me ask you about your new role as the incoming chairman of the House Oversight Committee, arguably one of the most powerful positions in Congress. You're going to have the ability to look into every corner of the Obama administration and what it is they're doing. Is it your goal to make the Obama administration's life miserable next year?
You know, the American people know that the bureaucracy has grown big and wasteful. If it makes the president miserable because I'm working with 74 IGs, the General Accountability Office, and others to make sure that we do a better job, well, that's what he signed up for. He signed up to make our country work better, and I want to help him do that.
What's going to be the first target of your committee, your first hearing, your first oversight investigation?
There's no question that our number one priority is to work with the 74 presidentially appointed, Senate-confirmed IGs. And we're going to focus on that. We're going to focus on how much work they can do as operatives within the administration to make it do better. I think that's the first way we become bipartisan. We say, Mr. President, we want to help your appointees do their job better. And I think if we do, the events that often are considered partisan should be less partisan.
All right, you want to arm the IGs, but beyond that, you must have your own ideas about things you want to focus on, things you've already focused on as the ranking minority member. Let me start, first of all, with the Fed and its activities. How closely do you plan to scrutinize the Fed, particularly given what we've learned recently about the Fed's lending?
Well, I think it's important to understand that the transparency of the Fed is my concern. The decisions of the Fed belong to the Financial Services Committee, but I want to get that transparency. I don't want to hear 5 years later that we can read a transcript of what went on a year ago. That's not acceptable. The American people are second-guessing many of the actions of the Fed, the trillions, that we've discovered that they've obligated, and I want to open that up so financial oversight can occur.
So you want more transparency, you want more timeliness in that reporting. I mean, some of that is in the Federal Reserve Act, is it not? I mean, you're talking about legal changes, law changes?
Peter, the important thing is the Federal Reserve Act intended a monetary policy event, not somebody who sits at the cabinet meetings with the president, who lobbies Congress, who has a legislative, literally a lobby shop here. This is becoming much more an activist Fed, one that is taking on obligations without appropriations. So I don't know about what a Congress decades and decades ago did. I know what we need to do.
Do you expect Ben Bernanke to come before your committee soon?
I expect him to. I'm meeting with him privately. We're going to talk about what he can do and will do to be more transparent. And if we can do enough, we may solve the problem.
What about the financial regulatory push, the new consumer agency that's being put together? Elizabeth Warren is an advisor to the administration in putting that together. Do you expect to scrutinize that, and do you expect her to testify in front of your committee, given the fact that she's not someone who's been approved by the Senate, confirmed by the Senate?
Peter, we're going to try and divide the difference between czars, unappointed but trying to run things in government, and those who have been appointed and confirmed. If you're doing operative work, if you're ordering people around in government, then you're not covered by being an advisor to the president. And in that role, we'll expect those czars to come before us.
Does Elizabeth Warren fit that test?
She currently does.
What about your other investigations? AIG, you've had an ongoing investigation there. We heard just yesterday the Treasury Department says, listen, looks like taxpayers are going to be made whole in this. They could even make money. Do you challenge that notion?
I challenge the notion that just getting your money back on paper is good enough when there's no question that money's flowed through AIG to companies far in excess of what they needed to. That's part of what we have to find in fact-finding. You know, when the government intervenes, the government is responsible not just to the taxpayers, they're also responsible to the shareholders. Was AIG unfairly treated? Was General Motors dealt with irresponsibly? These all need to be looked at. But remember, my number one priority is safety and security of the American people. My number two priority is reduce spending. My number three, but not the last by any means, is to get this economy going again so there'll be jobs. That's what we have to do with the administration whenever possible.
All right, Darrell Issa is the incoming chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. Thanks for the time. We look forward to following your committee and its work.